Heroes and Generals has had its ups and downs in popularity since its release, so I felt it would be good to make a video giving my opinion of the game. I started my account 4 years ago and have plenty of hours logged, and while Heroes and Generals is one of my favorite games, I feel that it could be a lot better than it is right now if it were given the proper attention. If you have no idea what Heroes and Generals is, it can be briefly described as a historical and strategic first-person shooter, which is basically just a technical way of saying a World War II themed FPS. Before I get into what I like and don't like, I'm going to outline the game first for prospective players. But if you already know this game, skip to where I will begin my pros and cons. Once in-game, you can choose between an infantryman fighting for the US, Germany, or the Soviet Union. Each faction is relatively balanced with little variations between weapons and vehicles. For example, the Germans have better tanks, the US have better automatic weapons, and the Soviets have few benefits but probably the best recon options. However, the fact of the matter is that these variations are ultimately trivial because the differences are often very slight and each faction has equally capable tanks, weapons, etc. Difference in player experience between factions may vary slightly, with the Germans often considered more serious and tactical in battle, the Soviets with more veteran players, and the US with more newbie players. However, these differences are also exaggerated, so if you are picking a faction, I would recommend you just choose your personal favorite. As you play the game and rank up, you will be rewarded with a higher salary and access to different classes, starting with the infantryman, but moving on to tanker, paratrooper, fighter pilot, recon, and eventually general, which I'll talk more about later. And this leads me to my first pro for Heroes and Generals. Heroes and Generals is not only able to give players a wide variety of options as far as class goes, but they also succeed in designing each class so that they can all effectively play in a single game, together without one class overpowering all the others, which keeps the wars enjoyable. In any given game, you can see tanks, planes, and troops all fighting together and against each other, which really adds something special to the game. Another thing that attracted me to Heroes and Generals was the recon gameplay, which in my opinion is some of the best. I personally really enjoy hiding in the bushes 300 meters away from the enemy with my sights trained on their movements and pulling the trigger, or clicking the mouse, at the perfect time to secure the kill. Additionally, the large maps in the game give way to some amazing sniping positions and tactics, which is complemented by the game giving you extra XP for long-range kills. But this isn't merely free XP because as a recon you'll have to estimate bullet travel time and drop off if you want to hit your shots. Admittedly, to get these long-range one-shot kills, you'll need to grind for a scope and the right attachments to bring your rifle up to sniping standards. This could go either way for me as a pro or a con because while the grind may be unbearable to some people, I personally appreciate the exclusivity and prestige that comes with being a fully decked-out recon. And there are equally suitable substitutes, for example, short-range scopes that could turn any infantryman into a pseudo-sniper. The last pro I will touch on is the general class. That makes this game really unique. And to be completely honest, I don't actually own a general, but I can still give you the idea of it. Essentially, after becoming rank 12, you are given the option to take your character out of combat and become a general. Generals play a leading role in the war against enemy factions as they decide where troops will go and where battles will be waged. Generals are responsible for winning or losing the war. Players that aren't generals and elect to play in the war game mode will essentially act as the general's pawns and use up resources in the form of lives that the general has set out for them at location towns. The player will then play a normal capture or defend game, but the result of the game will have an actual impact on the overall war. Winning battles will take over towns and eventually major cities, which is what ultimately wins wars. As a side note, the Soviet Union usually wins for reasons that elude me. And something to keep in mind is that the generals won't actually affect your gameplay, it's just a fun mechanic. That makes the game a little more interesting. Something I want to add at the end of my pros, which isn't really a pro or a con, but definitely something I want to talk about, is the graphics in Heroes and Generals. The graphics don't stand out in any way, so it's hard to put them on either side. You're more likely to be blown away by a Prancher's check to the chest than you will be by the graphics. Nevertheless, the graphics for this game work and leave the player satisfied. Moving on to the less optimistic side, I will now brutally criticize and ridicule this game for what are, in my opinion, some of the worst downfalls of this game. Starting with the grind. This can be attributed to a number of things, including overpriced weapons, attachments, or a low starting salary, or even the repair mechanic, which essentially taxes players for using their weapons. No matter how you split it, this game will have you grinding, something which is especially difficult for newer players who lack some of the tools required to survive in combat. New players are left without vehicles to move to the battlefield and are given 4-shot semi-automatic excuses for weapons that lack the firepower to kill a mouse. All the while, they are being absolutely decimated by the other team's veteran one-shot snipers, or God forbid, anyone with a fully automatic weapon. Basically, being a new player is only fun for the person killing you. Another thing that this game is lacking, as I mentioned earlier, is attention. The game devs seem to be neglecting some very big problems in their game. For example, it's not totally uncommon to wait 8 minutes searching for a game, and then once you find one and load in, you realize that the enemy team is just seconds away from capturing your last objective. This happens every now and then, and it's always annoying, and it seems like something that shouldn't be too hard for the devs to fix. Yet another issue I have with this game is the physics for some of the vehicles, which is only useful when you want to get a good clip of your motorcycle doing a full flip off of a small rock. But aside from that, most of the time in a vehicle, and especially in motorcycles, you'll be battling a lack of friction and stability that prohibits you from traveling anywhere without getting stuck, flipping your car, or sliding uncontrollably. In summary, Heroes and Generals occupies a unique niche as a free-to-play strategic first-person shooter that allows for engaging and strategic combat on a large and small scale. Personally, I love this game and would recommend that you try it at least once, especially if you enjoy sniping. I will link the Heroes and Generals website below if you want to do more digging, and I will additionally link a thread from the Heroes and Generals wiki that further discusses Heroes and Generals as a game. As a side note, this is actually my first YouTube video ever. I decided to start because I saw a lack of Heroes and Generals content on YouTube and I wanted to fill that void. I want to improve as much as possible, so please leave any criticisms or suggestions below in the comments and I'll be sure to read them. Thank you and thanks for watching.